begin. Again, my name is Miriam Naiman. I work in the NBN Answers and Advocacy Department at Nefesh B'Nefesh, and I am really thrilled to bring this event to you this evening. This is a very unique event where we have asked two Olim, two couples who have made Aliyah, not even in the very recent past. I would almost say that they are Olim Vatikim, that they made Aliyah some time ago. I have the honor to say that I remember when both of these couples arrived on their Aliyah. And without further ado, I am ready to begin. So Gary and Ricky, would you like to share your story with the audience? Tell us a little bit about your Aliyah.
We made Aliyah in 2014, April 1st. We were fools, I guess. But we had been married a little over a year. And we made Aliyah from Riverdale in New York. I had spent 45 years in Providence, Rhode Island, and Gary had spent quite a few years in Queens, New York, although he's a native of Michigan, born in Detroit, raised in Flint. And so Gary called me one day and from his office, from work, and he said to me, "What do you think about our making Aliyah?" And I had moved to Riverdale from Providence approximately a year and a half before that. So wasn't living in Riverdale that long. And my first reaction was, sure, why not? Yeah, of course. And most people, sane people, will put thought and planning and everything else into a decision that's so mega in your life, but we didn't, at least I didn't. Actually, April 1st, 2014, we made Aliyah. I don't know, shall I add some personal information or we have—
Where do you live?
We live in Jerusalem. We're in East Talpiot. I always get that wrong. Which is, actually we have a street that's known as a neighborhood by itself called Caspi. And it's between, if you know Arnona, very close to Arnona, Baca, very close to Baca, a 5-minute walk from the multiplex theater called Yes Planet, and near Nitzanim, the Beit Knesset that you may have heard of. Overall, we're very happy in Jerusalem, very happy with friends and people we've met here. Having spent 45 years in Providence, my experience in the States in a small Jewish community, unlike a lot of people, I don't have a lot of, actually very, very few friends from Providence and indeed from Rhode Island that made Aliyah. So I don't have a natural kind of community, but that didn't stop us from making friends in ulpan, meeting great people, having all kinds of activities that where we met a whole lot of new friends. It's been a great experience. Never perfect, as with anything in life. There are things you will miss from the States. There are things that you're delighted to have new, different, and improved, we'll call it. And overall, it's been really a great experience. In the beginning, I don't think I nudged Miriam too much at Nefesh B'Nefesh, although she's been great. They were so helpful. I mean, I'm sure everyone not only knows the name, but probably recognizes how helpful they could be to people making Aliyah, and those first few months and sometimes longer of working through problems and solutions to all kinds of things that develop just from daily life.
Excellent. And Mark and Carol, we would love to hear your story a little bit.
I don't know, share it. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, we made Aliyah August 2014. As a matter of fact, we met Ricky in Ulpan, and we've been friends ever since. So one of the items that I tell everybody is go to Ulpan, because that's where you will meet some of your cohorts. We came from West Orange, New Jersey, a community that we had been in for 40 years. We were very, very, very lucky and mazel dik that all three of our children came before us. So it was an easy decision once the last one came, and Hashem made it very easy for us by sending somebody who wanted to buy our house. So even before we had decided to make Aliyah, someone came and said, we want to buy your house. And Mark actually turned to me and said, what are our intentions? And we had no idea when, but they made an offer and we accepted. And as I always say, the train left the station and we had no choice, and we got there. I was a project manager in Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I literally retired on Friday, and I think we made Aliyah on a Tuesday. So my transition was not only Aliyah, but how to be a retiree.
So in terms of my background, I was a clinical social worker and then moved into a business, which I was able to really manage from here for about 5 years, and then sold it about a year ago. And now I am optimizing my retirement here in Israel. It's a dream that we've always had. Both of us speak Hebrew. Carol went to Yeshiva Flatbush. I had gone to a Camp Masad. So we did have the Hebrew. And as a result, we fell into our community, which is in Arnona, by looking for an apartment. Our first year here was rental, and we just fell upon this beautiful community that is within actually eyeshot of the United States Embassy. So I see the stars and stripes virtually every day. So it's a dream come true, and I was able to see my grandchildren grow up and are growing up, and it's been a wonderful experience for us. I just wanted to make 2 comments in terms of what one should bring if one is considering making Aliyah. I'm sure the people on this call are considering that. And a must for you to bring, if you haven't been told, is a sense of humor. You should make sure it should be unlimited, because you just have to approach it. There are going to be situations that a sense of humor will help you through it. And the other thing not to bring with you, and you should leave at home, is shyness. In Israel here, you need to speak up. You need to say what you need. Be aggressive in a helpful way, I guess. Coming from the States, we have a certain we like manners, but on the other hand, we also know, as they say in Hebrew, lo habayshan lomed, the one who is shy does not learn. So it's something that you need to consider. You're not born with the information. People in general are helpful if you need information, whether it be the Nefesh B'Nefesh team or whether it be people that you will meet. And just to accent how important the ulpan is, it's important for 2 purposes. 1, to learn Hebrew, but also the social networking that occurs in ulpan is extremely important, so that if you're not excited about having to go to an ulpan class, please understand that the social venue, and also to select an ulpan that has Anglos in it, because that's where your initial social connection is. Nothing against all the Olim who come from around the world, but I think you'll find that will help you begin to get acclimated and find friends very quickly.
Excellent. Could you please share with our audience about your ulpan experiences?
You don't need me.
Ricky.
Your mouth.
Gary, did you go to ulpan?
Yeah.
Did
Well,
you
I
know
have to-
Hebrew?
I have to tell you a little bit about my background till you see where I fit in with the ulpan.
Okay.
The first time I came to Israel was in 1961 when I was a sophomore in college. I spent 6 months at working at Tel Shomer Hospital, where Chaim Shiba was actually the director, and we became good friends. The next major event in my life after I got my college degrees is I got my PhD in 1965. In 1967, I became the first Jew to be accepted to the NASA astronaut program in the United States. However, when it finally dawned on me that there might be a Saturday launch, I had to leave that and consider other possibilities. So in 1968, I accepted the position of managing director of a new company in Israel. It was a joint venture between an American company and an Israeli company. And that was the first time I really had to talk just Hebrew, because we had predominantly people who spoke Hebrew exclusively. So I was there. It was a joint venture between an American company and the Hebrew University. We made medical diagnostic products. The company did very well. In the fourth year, we were exporting to 35 countries. And at that point, an opportunity came along, and I decided to go to medical school. So I left Israel, went to medical school in the United States, and practiced for several years there. Finally, in the last 9 years, the spark for Israel was reignited. And as Ricky explained to you, our mutual interest in Aliyah was realized when in 2014 we moved back to Israel, and here we are to stay. During this time, I worked for a short time as a physician in Mayanei Yeshua Hospital for a while, and then later went to teach at Touro College in Jerusalem. Now that was an English program. But all the time I had the advantage of going to ulpan here in Israel, and also insisting that the people that I came into contact with would speak to me only in Hebrew. So whenever they caught on to the English accent, Ricky gave me the best line. He says, "Ani lo mevin Anglit," and they would flip right into the Hebrew with that.
Ricky, did you go to ulpan?
Yes, I was in the Goldbergs class. That's how we met. We were in the same class at ulpan, and that was a great experience. I didn't learn
How
any.
was your Hebrew before you came?
It was very good, and that wasn't actually such a great thing that my Hebrew was very good, because I was a terrible student in ulpan. I didn't do any homework. I didn't conjugate verbs. I refused to do all the things you're supposed to do in ulpan, but I had a great time. And that it was the good news and the bad news. I think if I came with less Hebrew, I would have had to have worked harder at getting better at it. So, don't be intimidated if you don't know very much Hebrew. Just the reverse. You'll work a little bit harder, you make friends, and as the Goldberg said, it's a great experience.
Can you share a little bit, when you said you had a great time, can you share a little bit what that great time was, if you're talking about ulpan?
Right. So the social aspect, as they discussed, the social aspect is we had no idea that most of the people in our class became, I would say, lifelong friends, we'll call it. People we had something in common with. For example, two people actually in my class, we had rented for the first year too, and to find a neighborhood that we were comfortable with and wanted to buy an apartment in, new friends from ulpan put us in their car. We didn't yet have a car, took us around, showed us the greater Arnona area, and areas really that I didn't know at all, and Gary didn't either. And that was very, very helpful to tell us what they liked about the neighborhood. And it, to me, was an eye opener. It was great. It was great.
Carol, were there other English speakers in that ulpan? Someone is asking if there were other English speakers or a lot of English speakers in your ulpan class.
I think we happened to really luck out. We had really a lot of English speakers in the class. And, you know, one person invited you for Shabbat meal, and then they invited you with someone else, and then that person invited you. I mean, I remember coming literally with no one here. Yes, my children were here, but they don't live in Yerushalayim. They were definitely not a daily help to us. And I can't believe how quickly just one person led to the next, which led to the next, which led to the next. And so we were lucky. There were a lot of English speakers. I know friends who have found ulpans, and there's a lot of French speakers, and that didn't give them as much an opportunity to meet. So given that there's Beka Am and there's Morasha, I think, and there's Ulpan Linyan, one should not only be looking at their level, but try to figure out how many Anglos are there. And when I say Anglos, of course, it's South Africans and those from England. It isn't only Americans, but we were able to, just one person led to another. And when I look at my list now of how big my social circle is, it's
So
as a matter of fact, I want to tell you that what I did with my social circle is at the beginning, when we needed help from other people, I put together a group called Batik Venturers, started with 20 people so we could ask each other questions. Do you have a doctor? Do you have a plumber? Do you have an electrician? Things like that. And 5 years later, the group has grown to 270 people.
How many? I can't hear.
270 Anglos.
That's amazing. That's amazing on a lot of fronts, Carol. It's amazing in that, like, somebody asked a question, it seems that you need to have friends who are willing to help. And while you may or may not have had friends, you took the initiative and started a group which allowed you to meet people, have them help you, right? The more you have, the chances are better that someone is going to know the answer. And that was, 2014, 15, 16. Today in 2021, there's even more groups like that are either initiated by individuals and they grow that group, or Facebook, or whatever it is. So I would like to encourage people that even if you don't know anyone in your community, there's always going to be an online opportunity to meet other people. And that's not necessarily the same as face-to-face, but it does allow you to feel not alone, rather the opposite, that there are people in the same boat as you. A lot of people are interested beyond Ulpan, just to hear more about social activities and how you really got from A to B. Carol, you said you got here and, a little bit the different steps you took in meeting people, because I personally know that the four of you today are not the same people you were when I first met you off the plane in 2014. If you could just share a little bit what that was like to make new friends. It's hard to recreate that feeling of community. Whoever wants to go first.
If I may, I'll jump in. I think what Carol talked about, this Batik Ventures, this whole idea of social media groups. And I would think anyone who is making Aliyah, you could ask in advance so that you'd be able to know which of the groups and let the group know. I'm sure the Nefesh B'Nefesh staff probably has, and it's not necessarily only Yerushalayim. I know Netanya has in America, I should say an Anglo group. I know Modi'in has. So depending on where you're planning your Aliyah, if there are Anglos around, there's a group, and you just need to connect to that group. And people are extremely gracious in sharing. It's not easy to get information, but once you have it, you want to share it with others. And that keeps going back and forth. So I think that's one particular area, the groups. The other thing that those people who are have hobbies, or I think that's also Israel. There are English-speaking groups, whether, and there are things that I never was into, but suddenly being in Israel, I had the opportunity of joining a birding group, a gardening group, which is for Anglos, and suddenly you're meeting a whole social network of people, and you're learning some things that you never even thought you might be interested in. So you need to be also open to trying different things. There's also a hiking group for English speakers, and all this gets networked. In other words, you go in one of these groups, and does anyone know of hiking? I like to see nature. So, and it's also specific to age groups. So I think that, and I know professionally, I now got involved. I recently received my certification to be a medical clown because I wanted to do chesed, and I had the background. So now I will be, and I met a whole group of people who are into that. And we trained for almost a year now, and we're just about ready, once the corona situation lifts, to go into the hospitals and nursing homes and share smiles with a lot of people.
That's
I
great.
want to say that AACI, the Association for Americans and Canadians in Israel, have a tremendous amount of programs. They have a tremendous amount of trips. You get on lists of guides like Shuli Mishkin, and you go on her Teulim, and then you meet someone else and you realize you have something in common. So you just have to just be open to the experience, but know that the first couple of months it's going to be very, very tough because there's so many things you have to accomplish, from banking to bituach leumi, to all these things that when you think I have 10 things on my list and I can do 5 of them today, you can only do 1, maybe 2, and then there's a follow-up for number 1 and a follow-up for number 2. So the expectation that I know Americans certainly have was that you can get things done so much faster than you think, and takes a long time to get a lot of those things set.
I might also add for Nefesh B'Nefesh had wonderful trips as well that were great social outlets, and I always would look out for them and jump on those trips. They were really well done. And I wasn't asked to do this by Nefesh B'Nefesh, but that was part of my positive experience in my.
Could I add something to that? Could I add something to that? Probably the hardest part about Aliyah is knowing how to interact with the government and interact with the utilities and schools. You know, where do you start? Who do you contact? And what do you do about it? It turns out Nefesh B'Nefesh put together a booklet which has it all there. All the information's right there. You don't have to go anywhere beyond that point. So I strongly advise anybody who's thinking about Aliyah to get a hold of that booklet.
Wow. I have to say, Gary, I actually write that booklet, so I'm
Oh,
smiling.
Miriam, go Miriam.
No, it's terrific. You got to know that from cover to cover. You got to know that book.
Right.
It's on our website for anyone listening. It's called the Post Aliyah Guide. Did both of you come on Aliyah already joining children, or did either of you leave kids behind?
We left a lot of kids behind. We have 1 child each.
In Israel.
Married with family. And since we have 10 together, most of the children and the grandchildren, well, the children, but the grandchildren all left behind. But slowly they've been coming on gap year programs and yeshivas and seminaries, and we're getting to see them. And I think you have to also plan for going back to visit every once in a while, especially if your kids are in the States. That part is hard. But there's Zoom and there's WhatsApp, and people do all kinds of in-between things to communicate. And I think that hopefully too, although it has not happened for us, there'll be more of an interest in actually making Aliyah. So that's what we're hoping. My parents made Aliyah the day after the Yom Kippur War broke out, and they didn't have anybody. None of us were in Israel, and slowly we came to visit. We made Aliyah, but my parents only got to see at one point my brother and sister-in-law and their family, and no one else, but they got up and left and came back to the States occasionally. And we made more of an effort to come to Israel to see them. That part is hard. That part is hard.
Could I add one more thing? And that is that if you're a senior and you're retired, that's not a difficult aliyah. But if you're still supporting a family or supporting yourself, you got to get the job fast, as early as you can, because you got to support yourself while you're here. There's no magical way to do it. Nefesh B'Nefesh is a great source of information. I would strongly recommend that you tap that, but make as many contacts as you can, even before you come to Israel.
It's true, meaning that keeping your budget in mind is a very important aspect of planning, not only the planning part of your aliyah, but the living part of your aliyah. Meaning Carol shared how her first experience with a fixed income and retirement coincided with her day of aliyah and your first year of aliyah. And that's two whammies, both at the same time. And, Ricky, you mentioned about having kids abroad, or both of you having kids abroad, and that must impact your budget. I always tell those who are grandparents, you can't always suffer from the grandma syndrome. I know that, I know how I spoil my grandchildren who are all here in Israel, but I know that my mom can no longer really do what she used to do when she comes every visit, because thank God there are many of them. And so it's different when you come to live and you're truly, sort of counting on your own income versus going back to the country where you've come from and you have whatever you had there to maintain your needs. And I'd like to use this as a springboard to just talk about money for a moment. I like sharing the Facebook group, Living Financially Smarter in Israel. I think that's a fantastic group to know about because they discuss there anything money oriented. But Mark and Carol, if you could just share a little bit about, your Social Security. Do you have that deposited here or do you have it deposited in the States? If you could share a little bit how you came to look at, for an apartment and how you came to decide on Jerusalem, If you could just share a little bit about that.
First of all, we did start collecting Social Security, I think last year or 2 years ago. We chose to have it in the States only because we use our American credit cards as much as possible. And everybody out there, you can use American credit cards, but you have to get some Israeli ones as well. So because
we don't have Israeli credit cards, too expensive.
Okay, I don't know, we found we needed it for the, we found we needed it for the gas, but okay, that's neither here nor there. We primarily use American because all our money is in America, and actually the exchange rate on a credit card is really the highest you are going to get on each transaction, as opposed to bringing money over here. When we had a mortgage, the mortgage had to be paid in shekels, so we had to make sure to bring enough money over here. I will say that the best thing we did was we found a friend who actually lived in Arnona, and the year before we made Aliyah, we sat down to have a real tachlis conversation, and they laid out for us exactly what it would cost, what their mortgage costs, what their daily costs were. So it at least gave us an idea to say, okay, we have to hit a certain number. Will we have this in income between Social Security and pensions and interests from 401ks?
Can you share that? Can you share that amount, Carol? I know people are anxious to hear.
That number has changed radically. First of all, it depends if you're renting. It depends if you have a mortgage. I'm going to mislead people if I give a number. I'd gladly give a number privately when I have an idea. Are they living in Jerusalem? Are they living elsewhere? But I haven't looked at I'm really reluctant because I'm afraid we put a number out there and that's what people. At the time, this friend told me $90,000 a year was the number that we could live comfortably. I think it's gone up a bit. It also depends on what kind of good shopper you are. Do you go to the, the cheaper supermarkets? Do you go to the more expensive supermarkets? Do you own a car? Do you drive it a lot? All those are factors that you have to consider. We have a lot of friends who don't have cars. They use buses and they rent cars as needed. I think the Zuckermans did, not the Zuckermans, but Ricky and Gary didn't have a car the first year, and then sometimes you realize you have to have it. That was the most important thing to us because our children moved out of Jerusalem. That is the first thing we bought within 3 weeks of having landed.
And you asked about, we selected Jerusalem even though we have kids living in Ramat Shemesh and in Modi'in, because we just felt the center of, there's so much going on. If anything, as Gary mentioned, once you get over that initial dealing with the government and getting everything set up, the amount of opportunity here with theater and with whether it's gardening, whether it's nature, whether it's just beyond. You almost get overwhelmed with all the choices, and you almost have to limit your choices. So it's not a matter of, you're not going to be bored. And we thought Jerusalem was the place. None of our kids ever turned down an invitation to come to spend time with us in Jerusalem, and it's kind of equidistant. It's about 40 minutes to get to our kids. So that worked out. The other thing that we did is with regard to car, that you do get some rights to buy a new car. We found someone who sold us a new used car, a car that was, someone had it for 3 years, turned it in. We found that was a less expensive way. There's no reason we felt, even with the special incentive the government would give to New Olim, when we took it into account, we just felt that it didn't work for us. Other people want to have the new car, so we can give you the rationale. We give you our rationale, and you can decide for yourself which one is best for you. So that's why we chose Jerusalem.
And Mark, how do you manage your getting your money from the States to Israel?
Carol's the.
There's a couple of different ways. Like we have a friend who has a debit card, the right debit card, and they actually put it into the machine, take out 5,000 or 6,000, take out money from America, but it comes out in shekels, and then they deposit the shekels back into their account. So by the way, word to the wise, everybody who comes here, make sure you have your credit cards and you have a phone number that associated with that card, because there are times that the bank is going to want to text you or call you with a PIN code or a special way to get into your account should you be locked out. So make sure you have those kind of things set up. We transfer, one more thing, we transfer money with one of these transfer companies called Forex, and I'll decide to transfer, $25,000, and Forex will convert it and bring it into the bank. But because of money laundering rules, you're going to have to show where the money started from, where it's gone through, and the whole route that the money has taken. That also costs $45 for a wiring fee, and make sure you have a bank that doesn't have to have you there in person for wiring. Some banks you had to be there personally, so close those accounts and get one that you don't have to be there.
With regard to that communication, Carol mentioned about the phone call coming in case the bank that's associated with your credit card. One of the things there are pros and cons to this, but we did it. We took our number, we ported the number that we had for the last 40 some odd years in West Orange, and we owned that number. It cost us $50 or whatever, $75, and we're able then to use it. Now, with anyone calling us from the States, can call us on our number that we had in New Jersey. So that allowed us we wouldn't be forgotten by our friends in the States. And it's something that people that once they hear about it, they didn't realize, and they made Aliyah and they didn't report their numbers. So it's something you may want to look at. It's called reporting your number, and then you associated with Google or something. So just wanted to
Excellent.
like that.
Thank you. Ricky and Gary, do you find that the cost of living is significantly more in Israel versus the States? It's similar for your style of living?
Did we ever really compare? It's
No,
very hard
we haven't
because
compared.
we weren't retired in the States and we're retired here. You will notice that the supermarket prices, for example, are higher. There's no question about that. But healthcare, I mean, the kupot Olim, as you probably your whole audience here that's listening to us knows something about COVID and how terrific the vaccination program was and is, and it's everything else. It's not just the vaccines. We have access to terrific doctors, and the type of healthcare we get is really, I think, terrific and much less expensive, of course, than what we paid in the States. Healthcare in the States is expensive. People perhaps who still have their company's programs and are not really experiencing such high costs in the States, that's much more expensive than it is here. I need to have my ears cleaned very often. And in the States, that would be a $45 fee. And with the insurance coverage. And here it's free. You know, it's part of what they do all the time. And so I'm enjoying that.
Did you keep your US medical plan?
Yes, we did. We did. That's a little bit unusual. A lot of our friends don't have it, but we do. We spend, and maybe that's something more to add, we spend 2 months of the year in the States where we see all our kids. And that's, except for last summer during COVID, we've gotten back every summer, and we thought it important for 2 months of the year to have that coverage. So yes, we've maintained that.
So then you also maintain a US address?
Yes, we do.
And Goldberg's you also do?
You really have to for credit card purposes and
If you're going to
banking
use
purposes.
you're going to use your American
Yeah, you have
card.
to,
Right.
yeah, you have to have a friend who will get your mail.
Or a kid.
Right, your stock portfolios and your mutual funds through your brokerage houses. They do not want to hear that you're living abroad. So yes, you need an American connection. Yes, absolutely. And we don't have, we did something a little bit different, perhaps you've heard of, with a phone number. We have a magic jack. So anyone calling us is calling on a 718 number. It's free for them, it's free for us. It works very, very well, unlike, for example, a WhatsApp call, which I find infuriating. Works well sometimes, it doesn't work well other times, but the magic jack is amazing. I think we pay something like $99 for 3 years, and it's well worth it. It's great.
Somebody said on the webinar that we did last night, on the Zoom that we did last night, something really great. She said how her second year was spent undoing all of the mistakes of their first year. She thought that she was making really good decisions in her first year, but then she experienced more and learned more. And that's what she had to say. Can you guys both share a little bit? Somebody asked a wonderful question. If you could share an unexpected aspect of your experience. And I would ask the Goldbergs to say something negative and the Zuckermans to say something positive. A wow moment, like, oh my gosh, positive, and oh my gosh, negative.
Okay, so Carol?
Okay, no, nothing is coming to mind.
Nothing negative on the Goldbergs. Okay, anyway, so I would say that for us, purchasing. We brought a lot of stuff over, like a lift. I don't think Moses would have been able to take the whole people of Israel out of Egypt if we were, having to bring, if we were the typical family leaving. We brought much too much than we needed to do. And also, we've reached the conclusion for ourselves that buying ovens and is something we thought, because we were here in the 70s and we had that mindset. Israel is no longer a third world country. They have top of the line kitchen stuff or whatever, and when you buy it in the States, you kind of lose the warranties. But when you buy it from and when you figure in the cost of having to put it on a lift and bring it over here and then not have the warranty, the savings of a couple of dollars, in our opinion, was not worth. And we had a situation where we bought these two dryers.
A huge washer and dryer, which first of all did not fit into the place that it was supposed to be in the apartment we rented. We had to take off the door to get it in. And then when we purchased an apartment, it was way too big for this apartment, and we sold it at a big loss. I guess that was undoing what we came from. I strongly suggest if you're doing a custom kitchen and you need certain appliances in the States, then go ahead.
One thing I would like to put into this discussion. One thing I'd like to put into the discussion is that aside from finding a job, if you're in the category where you definitely need the job, the biggest problem you're going to have is finding an apartment. They're available. They're on the expensive side, but locating exactly what you want. We saw 40 apartments before we decided on what we wanted.
40 apartments with 16 agents.
So what we did is we rented an apartment to begin with, so we could make these rounds. It took us 16 months to find the right apartment. Mm-hmm. So you have to be ready for that. You also have to be ready to make your down payment and finance the loans. Right now, real estate loans are as cheap as they're ever going to be. So it's a good time to be buying, but be careful because the prices are going up very fast especially in Jerusalem. And a large part of this is because of the political instabilities in other parts of the world. So as a result, if you're thinking about Aliyah, do it as soon as you can because it's getting more expensive.
We didn't bring appliances though. We had heard horror stories about getting parts, and we did have, I think my niece, who actually went back to the States, but she had trouble getting a Sub-Zero refrigerator or something like that into a house that she had that we knew not to do that. And the appliances really are very well priced now, and you can get all kinds from different countries. So I don't think that was a problem. I think that life is really great. So we didn't mention the opera, the ballet, concerts, theater of all sorts, in Hebrew, in English. I really think we take advantage of everything, just about. COVID, of course, has thrown a monkey wrench into all of that. But, I still have my opera subscription. We'll go to Tel Aviv. Sometimes we stay overnight. Sometimes we come back right after the performance. And we really have been enjoying that tremendously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if you had to leave our audience just with one thought, Goldberg's, what would that be?
One thought.
Aliyah is fantastic, but it involves a lot of planning. Ask a lot of questions, get a lot of information so that you don't make some of the mistakes that we made. You'll make your own mistakes. But planning is really, really the key.
And it's an adventure that you will, to me, every day, I am grateful for being here and thanking God and I'm here. And that's something that it's very hard to express in words, but you know you're a part of the destiny of the Jewish people, and that makes it very special.
Nice. Ricky and Gary, how would you like to leave our audience this evening?
I think the old, what I think it was a Nike, their tagline, just do it. I think you have to just do it sometimes. It'll be great. I think what Carol created with close to 300 Vatik venturers helping each other instantaneously. I need this, that broke, or that I need a professional in, and having a dozen people answer you and tell you what they found, who to call. It's just, Carol Goldberg created a miracle to help us all. It really.
Oh, wow.
But you're right. I mean, there are there are WhatsApp chat groups in just about every apartment building that I know of, and they help each other. And I think it can be fantastic, and it's really a community. It becomes a community, and it's really wonderful.
That's really special.
As I mentioned, my first experience with Aliyah was between 1968 and 72 when I had the industrial position. I think the biggest mistake I made in my life, although I made a few mistakes that were Lulu's, but the biggest mistake in this area is that I left. I shouldn't have left in the first place. I should have stayed here in 72, and I could have established myself. Children, whatever their ages, are amazingly pliable and can assimilate into an Israeli community, even if they don't know a word of Hebrew. So don't give up the possibility of bringing children that are in the middle years of childhood to Israel. They'll adapt very well.
Okay, amazing. Having myself 25 years ago brought our 6 children. Took a little bit of time, but today I love saying to my grandchildren, "Aval ani ola chadasha v'savta lo mevina," even though they know that's not how I speak Hebrew, but I exaggerate because I think it's important that they realize that I was an immigrant, because we all have our story. And one of my dreams was to raise my children here, mostly for that second generation, so that I would have my grandchildren as fluent in Hebrew as they are. I thank you both for sharing your story with us. There were still a lot of questions, and I'm sorry not all of those questions got answered. I would like to bring everybody's attention to 2 different things. One, we will be having a single specific event, just like this one, after Pesach, after Passover. The other thing is that there were a lot of questions that were specific to planning, to retiree planning or empty nester planning. We've had a lot of events. You can find them on our events tab under the pre-recorded events, whether that's about Social Security or healthcare, or even how to choose a community. We've had all of them. I wish the Goldbergs and the Zuckermans and all of you who listened this evening a beautiful, wonderful Passover holiday, and have a great day. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you.